She called him 47 times. 47. While her car was wrapped around a guardrail. While blood pooled beneath her seat. While their unborn baby's heartbeat flickered and faded. She called him, and he silenced his phone. Not because he didn't love her, not because he was cruel, but because his best friend Vanessa handed him a champagne flute, smiled, and said, "Let's not let her ruin tonight." And he believed her. If you think that's the worst part of this story, you're wrong. Because what Cassian Laurent didn't know, what would take him 3 years and everything he owned to discover, was that Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing. She knew about the baby Solène was carrying. She knew about the dangerous road she'd sent Solène down. And she knew every single time that phone lit up with Solène's name. This is the story of how one man's blindness cost him everything. His wife, his child, his empire, and whether 3 years of groveling could ever be enough. We are about to dive into the full story. Quickly, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to support the channel. And I have a question for you. Where are you watching from? Chapter 1, The Anniversary. The reservation was for 7 o'clock. Their 3rd wedding anniversary. The corner table at Lumiere, where Cassian had proposed. White roses on the table, because Solène loved them. A private room booked, because Cassian knew she hated crowds. Solène had planned everything. She'd bought a new dress, emerald green, his favorite color. She'd hidden the tiny baby shoes in her clutch, wrapped in tissue paper, waiting for the perfect moment. 8 weeks pregnant, 3 positive tests, 1 secret she'd been dying to tell him. Tonight was supposed to change everything. But at 5:47 p.m., Cassian's phone rang. "Vanessa. I know it's your anniversary," she said, her voice shaking with manufactured distress. "But the gallery lighting is wrong, the caterers are threatening to leave, and I'm having a panic attack. I need you here. Just for an hour. Please, Cass. You're the only one who can fix this." Solène watched from the bedroom doorway as her husband's shoulders tensed, as his eyes flickered with guilt, as he turned to her with that look she'd seen 100 times before. And she understood why he always chose Vanessa. Because 15 years ago, when Cassian was a nobody, a scholarship kid from nowhere with holes in his shoes and $50 to his name, Vanessa had been the one to believe in him. She'd introduced him to her father's investors. She'd vouched for him when no one else would. She'd made a single phone call that changed his life forever. And Cassian had never forgotten that debt, even when it cost him everything else. "It's just an hour," he promised Solène. "I'll be at the restaurant by 7, I swear." She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab him by the collar and say, "I'm pregnant. Our baby is growing inside me right now. Stay. For once in our marriage, stay." But she didn't, because she'd promised herself this moment would be special, not born from jealousy, not a desperate plea to compete with Vanessa. "Go," she whispered, and he did. The hour became 2, then 3. By 8:15 p.m., Solène sat alone at their anniversary table, her champagne untouched, the baby shoes burning a hole in her bag. She texted him, no response. Called him once, voicemail. Called again, voicemail. A waiter approached with pitying eyes. "Would madam like to order?" She left. The drive home should have taken 20 minutes, but her GPS showed an accident on her usual route. And then she remembered what Vanessa had mentioned 5 weeks ago during their last lunch together. If you're ever stuck in traffic, take Riverside Drive. It cuts through the warehouse district, so much faster than the main roads. Solène turned onto Riverside Drive. She didn't know about the construction. She didn't know about the missing guardrail signs that had been reported but not yet replaced. She didn't know that in exactly 4 minutes, her entire world would shatter. Chapter 2. The Wreckage. The truck came out of nowhere. Headlights, a horn, the scream of tires on wet asphalt. Then, impact. Metal crushing, glass exploding. the world spinning, 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 and then silence. Solène came to awareness slowly. Pain. Everywhere. Her legs pinned beneath the dashboard. Blood dripping into her eyes. Her phone. Where was her phone? There. Cracked screen. But still working. She dialed Cassian. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. She dialed again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. Somewhere beneath the pain and the terror, she felt something worse. A cramping, low in her belly, getting stronger. No, she whispered. No, no, no. She dialed again, and again, and again. Each time, she prayed. Please answer. Please, God, let him answer. But the calls kept going to voicemail. Over and over and over. 47 times. She didn't know that 15 miles away, in a glittering gallery full of champagne and laughter, her husband felt his phone buzzing in his pocket for the 5th time. She didn't know that he glanced at her name on the screen and sighed with irritation, thinking she was being dramatic about the missed dinner. She didn't know that Vanessa was watching, because when Cassian's phone lit up again with Solène's name, Vanessa materialized beside him with 2 fresh champagne flutes, and that smile, the one that had been manipulating him for 15 years. Solène again? She asked, glancing at his pocket. She's upset about the anniversary, Cassian muttered. I'll call her back after your speech. Of course. Vanessa's voice was honey. Here, hold my glass for a second. I need to fix my lipstick. She took his phone from his pocket smoothly, naturally, like she'd done it 100 times before. And she had. She slipped it into her purse. Let's not let her ruin tonight, she said, touching his arm. This is my moment, Cass, and you promised you'd be here for me, like I was there for you when no one else believed in you. The guilt. Always the guilt. It was Vanessa's most effective weapon, and Cassian trusted her. He always had. That trust would cost him everything. Meanwhile, in the wreckage on Riverside Drive, Solène was fading. The 911 call lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Please, she whispered to the dispatcher, please call my husband, Cassian Laurent. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him the baby and I, we need him. Ma'am, help is on the way. Stay with me. Can you tell me about the baby? How far along are you? 8 weeks. He doesn't know yet. I was going to tell him tonight. It was supposed to be special. Her voice broke. The cramping was getting worse. Waves of agony rolling through her. I had baby shoes in my purse for our anniversary. I just wanted to see his face when he realized. A long pause, then, barely audible. I think something's wrong. I think I'm losing the baby. Please, please tell him I'm sorry I couldn't hold on. And then, silence. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was the distant wail of sirens. Chapter 3. The Truth. Cassian left the gallery at 9:47 p.m., 2 hours later than he'd promised. But Vanessa's speech had run long. Then she'd needed help with the gallery owner. Then one of her investors wanted to meet him, and Cassian, who owed Vanessa everything, had stayed. He was planning his apology. Roses, her favorite chocolate from that little shop in Soho. Maybe a weekend trip to make up for the missed dinner. He retrieved his phone from Vanessa's purse, not thinking twice about why it was there. His mind was already on Solène, on the groveling he'd have to do. He didn't check his notifications. He started driving home. And then he saw it. The flashing lights, the crowd of onlookers, the twisted metal that used to be a car. His heart stopped, because he recognized that car, emerald green, because she'd matched it to the dress she was wearing tonight. Cassian's hands shook as he pulled over. His legs barely carried him as he ran toward the wreckage. His mind kept screaming, no, 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 no. A police officer stopped him. Sir, you can't be here. That's my wife's car. The words came out strangled. That's my wife's car. Where is she? Where is she? Sir, the victim was transported to Memorial Hospital hours ago. Hours ago. Cassian stumbled backward. His phone. Where was his phone? He pulled it out with numb fingers, and his world collapsed. 47 missed calls from Solène. 12 missed calls from Memorial Hospital. 3 voicemails from Kieran. Kieran, Solène's estranged brother, the man who hadn't spoken to her in 10 years. Cassian pressed play on the first voicemail with shaking hands. Kieran's voice, shaking with barely contained rage. Where the hell are you? The hospital has been calling for hours. Solène's critical but stable, but they need consent for a high-risk procedure that might save the baby. She's dying, and you can't even answer your phone. The baby. What baby? The second voicemail. They found my number in some old contact file. I'm on a plane right now. I gave consent for the surgery because they couldn't reach you. If she dies before I get there, if she dies because of you. The third voicemail, quieter, broken. She's out of surgery. She's alive. But the baby, by the time I got there and gave consent, the baby's heartbeat had already stopped. Did you even know she was pregnant? Did you even care? Cassian couldn't breathe. Their baby had existed for 8 weeks, and he never knew. His wife had carried that secret, that joy, that hope, entirely alone, and now their child was gone. The drive to Memorial Hospital took 17 minutes. Cassian didn't remember any of it. He burst through the emergency room doors, screaming her name, demanding to see her. But it was Kieran who met him first. 6'3", built like a soldier, eyes that could cut through steel. And right now, those eyes were murderous. You, Kieran said, his voice low and lethal. You have some nerve showing up now. Where is she? I need to see her. Kieran's fist connected with Cassian's jaw before he could finish the sentence. Cassian hit the floor, tasted blood, didn't care. She called you 47 times. Kieran stood over him, trembling with rage. 47, while she was bleeding out, while she was losing your baby, and you couldn't be bothered to answer. I didn't know, Cassian whispered. I didn't know she was pregnant. She was 8 weeks along. Kieran's voice was ice. She was going to tell you tonight, at your anniversary dinner, the one you skipped for your precious Vanessa. Cassian felt the world tilt. 8 weeks. The baby, he choked out. Is the baby gone? Kieran turned away. The trauma from the crash caused complications. The doctors could only stabilize her without consent for the riskier procedure. By the time I arrived and authorized it, it was too late. Gone. Their child was gone. And Solène was somewhere in this hospital, fighting for her life, not knowing that her husband had finally shown up. 4 hours too late. Chapter 4. The Recording. Solène survived. 3 weeks in a coma. 4 surgeries. A recovery that doctors called miraculous. And when she finally opened her eyes, when she finally looked at Cassian, who hadn't left her bedside for a single moment, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at him with hollow eyes and said 5 words that ended their marriage. I want a divorce, Cassian. Kieran handed her the papers he'd already prepared, and Solène signed them without hesitation. But 2 weeks later, something happened that would make everything infinitely worse. Someone leaked the 911 call. The TikTok appeared at 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. Just 4 minutes and 37 seconds of audio, with white text overlaying a black screen. This is the 911 call from the wife of billionaire Cassian Laurent. She called him 47 times that night. He never answered. And then, Solène's voice. Broken, terrified, fading. Please, please call my husband, Cassian Laurent. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him the baby and we need him. The dispatcher's voice, urgent. Ma'am, help is on the way. Stay with me. He didn't answer. I called him so many times. He didn't answer. I just wanted to tell him about the baby. I had baby shoes in my purse for our anniversary. A long pause, then barely audible. I think something's wrong. I think I'm losing the baby. Please, please tell him I'm sorry I couldn't hold on." The video ended with those 5 words burned into the screen. He never answered the phone. Within 6 hours, it had 4 million views. Within 12 hours, 12 million. By the end of the week, #WhereWasCassian was trending worldwide. The comments were merciless. She was begging for him while dying, and he couldn't be bothered to answer. "The baby shoes. The baby shoes. I'm physically ill." This man let his pregnant wife die alone for what? A party? Every news outlet picked it up. Someone had photographed Cassian at Vanessa's gallery opening that night, smiling, champagne in hand, while his wife bled out on Riverside Drive. The narrative wrote itself. Cheating husband, pregnant wife, 47 unanswered calls, a baby that never got to be born. Cassian became the most hated man in America overnight. A journalist found him outside Memorial Hospital 3 days after the leak. Camera crew in tow, microphone thrust in his face. "Mr. Laurent, the public wants to know, where were you when your wife called 47 times?" Cassian stared at the microphone. Then he heard it. Someone in the crowd was playing the audio from their phone. Solène's voice, tinny and broken. "Please call my husband. Tell him the baby and we need him." And something inside Cassian cracked. His legs gave out. Right there, on the hospital steps in front of a dozen cameras, Cassian Laurent collapsed. He crumpled like a man whose bones had turned to dust, and he wept. Not just tears, sobs, the kind that come from somewhere so deep you didn't know that place existed. The cameras captured everything. The video went viral alongside the 911 call. Inside her hospital room, watching on her brother's phone, Solène saw her husband breaking, and for one brief moment, she almost felt something other than rage. Almost. Then she remembered the baby shoes still in her wrecked car, and the hollowness returned. The next morning, Solène discharged herself from the hospital against medical advice. Kieran had arranged everything. A private plane, a house in the mountains, security, lawyers, everything she needed to disappear. "You don't have to see him again," Kieran promised. "Ever." Solène nodded. She didn't look back as the car pulled away. She didn't know that Cassian watched from a 4th-floor window, his hand pressed against the glass, his heart in pieces. She didn't know that he'd already started planning. Because Cassian Laurent had made many mistakes, but giving up on Solène, that was something he would never do. Chapter 5. The Journal. 6 months after Solène left, her lawyers demanded he vacate their home. Cassian had delayed as long as possible. Every room held memories. Her perfume still lingered on the pillows. Her coffee mug still sat in the cabinet. Leaving meant accepting it was truly over. But the court order was final. He had 72 hours. Cassian moved through the house like a ghost, boxing up 3 years of marriage. He saved her nightstand drawer for last. He'd never opened it. Ever. Even during their marriage. "It's private," she'd said once, with a small smile. "A girl needs her secrets." And Cassian, who had so few boundaries when it came to Vanessa, had always respected that one with Solène. But she wasn't here anymore. And the drawer was part of the house he had to empty. He opened it slowly. Inside was a small leather journal, and tucked into the front cover, an ultrasound photo. Cassian's hands began to shake. The photo was dated 1 week before the accident. Written in the corner, in Solène's handwriting, "Baby Laurent, 8 weeks." He couldn't breathe. He opened the journal. 5 entries. That's all there was. She'd only known for 1 week, but each page destroyed him. Entry 1. "I'm pregnant. I took 3 tests to be sure. I can't believe it. We're going to have a baby. I haven't told Cassian yet. I want it to be perfect. Our anniversary is in 6 days. I'm going to tell him then." Entry 2. "I've been so nauseous, but I hide it when he's around. He's been so distracted with Vanessa's gallery prep. It's okay. In less than a week, everything changes. He's going to be a father. God, he's going to be such a good dad. Entry 3. I bought a pair of tiny baby shoes today. They're so small, I cried in the store. I'm going to wrap them and give them to him at dinner. I can already see his face when he realizes. Entry 4. Vanessa called him again during our movie night. He left to help her with emergency planning for the gallery. I almost told him about the baby right then, just to make him stay. But I didn't. I want the moment to be special. Not born from jealousy. Soon. Entry 5. Dated the morning of the accident. Tonight I tell him. I'm terrified and excited and so in love with him. With us. With this little life we made. Our family starts tonight. That was it. 5 entries. 8 weeks of hope. And Cassian had missed all of it. He'd been so busy with Vanessa's gallery. So distracted by her emergencies. So convinced that Solène's frustration was just jealousy. He'd left her alone with the biggest secret of her life. And now she was gone. The baby was gone. And all he had was this journal full of dreams that would never come true. 3 months later, Cassian finally managed to get past her security. He showed up at a coffee shop she frequented. Not stalking, just waiting. When she walked in and saw him, her face went pale. Please, he said, standing. Just give me 5 minutes. I found something. In the house. The journal. I need to... Don't. Her voice was ice. Solène, I read it. The baby's journal. And I... Don't you dare. She stepped closer and he saw something in her eyes that stopped him cold. Not anger. Something worse. Contempt. Don't you dare grieve for a baby you never knew existed, she said softly. You don't get to mourn what you ignored. You don't get to cry over an ultrasound photo when I bled out alone in that car. You don't get to find that journal and suddenly understand what you lost. Solène, you lost nothing, Cassian, because you never had them in the first place. I carried that baby alone. I dreamed about them alone. I lost them alone. Her voice cracked just slightly. So no, you don't get to share that grief with me now. Not after everything. She turned and walked out. Cassian didn't follow. He just stood there, holding a journal full of his wife's shattered dreams. And for the first time, he truly understood. He couldn't just apologize his way back. He had to change. Completely. Fundamentally. He had to become someone worthy of her forgiveness.
Chapter 6. The Fall. The next 2.5 years were a masterclass in self-destruction.
But not the pathetic kind, the purposeful kind. Cassian Laurent began systematically dismantling his own life. It started with therapy. Not the kind billionaires do for show. Real therapy. 3 times a week. With a specialist in attachment disorders and trauma bonds. Because Cassian had finally asked himself a question he'd been avoiding for 15 years. Why had he always put Vanessa first? The answer was ugly. Vanessa hadn't just helped him once. She'd saved him. When he was 22 and desperate. When his mother was dying and he had no money for her treatment, Vanessa's father had written a check. $200,000. Pay me back when you make it big, he'd said. And Cassian had built his empire on that foundation. He'd paid back every cent with interest. But the emotional debt? That had never been repaid. Vanessa had made sure of it. Every time Cassian tried to set boundaries, she'd remind him, "My father believed in you when no one else would. Don't forget that, Cass." And he never did. Solène had tried to tell him, so many times, "It's not normal, Cassian, the way she controls you. One favor 15 years ago doesn't give her ownership over your life." But he hadn't listened. He'd called Solène jealous, insecure, dramatic. And Vanessa had encouraged every dismissal. "She's threatened by our history. That's not your problem." The moment he truly saw Vanessa's manipulation, he cut her off completely. Changed his number. Blocked her on every platform. had his security team add her to a no-contact list. Vanessa didn't take it well. She showed up at his office 2 weeks later, furious. "After everything my family did for you," she'd said, her mask finally slipping, "you're choosing her, a woman who can't even keep a baby alive?" Those words, those vile, disgusting words. Cassian had never been a violent man, but in that moment, security had to physically restrain him. "Get out," he said, his voice barely human, "and if you ever come near me or Solène again, I will destroy you. I don't care what your family did for me. That debt is paid. We're done." Vanessa left, but her parting words chilled him to the bone. "You'll regret this, Cass. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Cassian's empire began crumbling almost immediately, not because of the scandal, but because he stopped showing up. There was a major merger on the table, a deal worth $2.3 billion, the biggest of his career. The final negotiation conflicted with his therapy appointment. The board meeting was tense. His CFO laid out the stakes. "If you're not in that room tomorrow, we lose everything." Cassian looked at the faces around the table, men who'd built empires alongside him, men who thought he'd lost his mind. "I've spent 15 years building an empire and losing my soul," he said quietly. "I let a woman who loved me die alone, because I was too blind to see I was being manipulated. I'm done prioritizing money over everything else. Vote me out if you want. I'm going to therapy." He stood up and walked out. The deal fell through. His stock price tanked. His investors panicked. And Cassian didn't care. The next 2 years were brutal. He sold off 3 companies to fund therapy, donations to causes Solène loved, and the private investigators he'd hired. Because something had been bothering him about the accident. The timing, the road, Vanessa's behavior that night. He stepped back from his remaining businesses, watching partnerships dissolve, watching his empire shrink. He donated anonymously to the hospital where Solène had nearly died, funding a new trauma center. He tracked down Kieran and tried to apologize. Kieran broke his nose. Cassian thanked him and kept coming back until Kieran finally agreed to talk. He sent Solène letters, hundreds of them. She never responded, but he kept writing anyway. By year 3, Cassian Laurent was barely recognizable. The billionaire golden boy had become a cautionary tale. His net worth had dropped by 80%. His empire was a shadow of itself, and he didn't care. Because his investigators had finally found something. Something that would change everything. Chapter 7. The Footage. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mr. Laurent, this is Rachel Chen. I was Vanessa Aldridge's personal assistant for 7 years. We need to talk." Cassian's blood ran cold. "About what?" "About what really happened the night of your anniversary. I have security footage from Vanessa's penthouse, from the afternoon before the accident. And you need to see it. Why are you coming forward now? It's been 3 years. Rachel's voice shook. "Because Vanessa just fired me. After 7 years of loyal service, she fired me because I questioned an expense report. And when I cleaned out my desk, I found files, evidence of things she'd done, things she'd made me do. I went to the DA and got immunity in exchange for testimony. And now, I need you to see what she's capable of." 45 minutes later, Cassian sat in Rachel's apartment, staring at a laptop screen. The video quality was crystal clear. Vanessa's penthouse. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m., the afternoon of the anniversary. Vanessa was on the phone, pacing in front of her massive windows. "Cassian's wife called me, asking about shortcuts to avoid traffic tonight," she said, her voice casual, unbothered. "Yes, I told her to take Riverside Drive, through the warehouse district." Cassian's hands gripped the chair. Riverside Drive, the road where Solène had crashed. "I know there's construction there. I drove past it yesterday. They've got signs down, missing guardrails. The whole area is a mess. That's exactly why I suggested it." Rachel paused the video. She knew. She deliberately sent Solène down a dangerous road. Keep playing, Cassian whispered. Vanessa continued. If she gets delayed or doesn't show up, Cassian will be annoyed with her, not me. He'll stay at my gallery longer. It's perfect. She's been so clingy lately about their anniversary. I just need to remind him where his real loyalties lie. The call ended, but Vanessa didn't move. She walked to her kitchen counter and picked up an envelope. She pulled out 2 items, a photograph of a positive pregnancy test, and an OB appointment card with Solène's name on it. Cassian stopped breathing. Where did she get those? He whispered. Rachel's voice was heavy with guilt. 5 weeks before the accident, Vanessa insisted on taking Solène to a spa day. A girls' bonding experience, she called it. She made me book the whole thing. While Solène was in the sauna, Vanessa went through her purse and photographed everything. She was looking for ammunition, and she found it. On screen, Vanessa stared at the pregnancy test photo, and then she laughed. Oh, this is perfect, she said to herself, her voice dripping with vicious delight. She's pregnant, 8 weeks along, and she hasn't told him yet. She pulled out her phone and made another call. Change of plans. Cassian can't know about the baby yet. If she's too scared to tell him now, imagine how insecure she'll be after he forgets their anniversary for me. After he chooses my event over her dinner. She'll be devastated. And when she finally does tell him about the baby, he'll feel so guilty, he'll overcompensate. They'll probably work things out. A pause. Then, unless something happens to make her think twice about whether he's really father material, like him not being there when she needs him most. Vanessa smiled at her reflection in the window. Riverside Drive it is. Let's see if their marriage can survive him choosing me again. The footage ended. Cassian sat in stunned silence. Vanessa hadn't just manipulated him. She'd orchestrated everything. She'd sent Solène down a dangerous road, knowing there was construction, knowing it was unsafe. She'd stolen information about the pregnancy. She'd taken his phone to make sure he couldn't answer. This wasn't just manipulation. This was deliberate, calculated. This was attempted murder. There's more, Rachel said quietly. She pulled out a folder. Text messages between Vanessa and her lawyer. Plans she was making. She was going to offer to be a supportive friend to Solène after the accident. Position herself as the good guy who tried to warn Cassian he was neglecting his wife. She had a whole strategy to isolate you from Solène and make you even more dependent on her. Cassian's hands shook with rage. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I was terrified. Rachel's voice broke. Vanessa had leverage on me. Financial records I'd falsified for her on her orders. If I'd come forward 3 years ago, I would have gone to prison too. But when she fired me, when I realized she was just going to discard me like I meant nothing after 7 years, I went to the DA. I told them everything. I got immunity. And now, I want her to pay for what she did. Cassian took the footage to the police that afternoon. They opened an investigation immediately. Vanessa was arrested. 6 weeks later, charged with reckless endangerment, conspiracy, theft, and a dozen other crimes. But Cassian didn't care about the legal system. He cared about one thing only. Solène. He had to show her the truth. He had to prove that the accident wasn't just his blindness. It was Vanessa's malice. 3 months later, after countless attempts, Solène finally agreed to meet him. One last time. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. They met at a small cafe in the mountains. Neutral territory. Far from cameras. Far from the world that had torn them apart. Kieran waited in a car outside, ready to intervene if needed. Solène looked different. Stronger. Less hollow. 3 years had been good to her. Or at least as good as they could be. You have 10 minutes, Solène said, her voice steady. Say what you need to say, and then let me go. Cassian nodded. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He didn't make excuses. Instead, he pulled out his laptop. I need to show you something, he said. Something I found 6 months ago. Something that changes everything. Solène's eyes narrowed. If this is some kind of manipulation, it's not, I promise. Just watch. He pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the small cafe. I told her to take Riverside Drive. I know there's construction there. Missing guardrails. That's exactly why I suggested it. Solène's face went pale. She's pregnant. 8 weeks along, and she hasn't told him yet. Imagine how insecure she'll be after he forgets their anniversary for me. The laughter. That vile, triumphant laughter. Unless something happens to make her think twice about whether he's really father material. When the footage ended, the cafe was silent. Solène's hands were shaking. Her eyes were filled with tears. She knew, Solène whispered. She knew about the baby. Yes, she sent me down that road on purpose, knowing it was dangerous. Yes, she took your phone. She saw every call, and she let our baby. Solène couldn't finish. The sobs came then. Deep, wrenching sobs. Cassian wanted to reach for her, but he didn't. He just sat there, letting her process, letting her grieve. Finally, she looked up at him. Why did it take you 3 years to find this? Cassian's voice broke. Because I had to become someone capable of finding it. I had to tear apart my own life to see the truth. I gave up everything, my company, my reputation, my fortune, to uncover what Vanessa did. And I'd do it again, 1,000 times, because you deserve to know. He closed the laptop. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Solène. I'm not asking for another chance. I know I don't deserve one. I enabled Vanessa for 15 years. I ignored every warning you gave me. I put you second over and over again until it killed our baby. His voice cracked. But you were right about everything. Every instinct, every fear, and I am so sorry that you had to be right alone. That I made you feel crazy for seeing what I was too blind to see. Solène was crying now, not loudly, just quiet tears streaming down her face. I was going to tell you that night, she whispered. About the baby. I had the shoes in my purse. I'd been dreaming about your face when you realized. I know. Cassian's eyes were red. I read the journal, entry 5. Our family starts tonight. A sob escaped her. I wanted you to be there. I wanted you to hold my hand when I told you. I wanted us to be happy together. And instead I was 15 miles away, drinking champagne while you died. He reached across the table, slowly, carefully, not to grab her, just to offer his hand, palm up, waiting. I can't undo what I did, he said. I can never bring our baby back. I can never erase those 47 calls. But I can promise you something. She looked at his hand, then at his face. What? She whispered. If you ever let me back into your life, even as a friend, even as someone you see once a year, I will never, ever put you second again. You will be my first call, my first thought, my first priority. Not because I'm trying to earn your forgiveness, but because you always should have been, and I was too broken to see it. Solène stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Then she stood up. Cassian's heart stopped. This was it. The goodbye, the end. But instead of walking away, she walked around the table and sat down beside him. Close. Closer than she'd been in 3 years. I'm not ready to forgive you, she said softly. I don't know if I ever will be. I know. I still have nightmares about that car, about the blood, about losing them. I still hate you sometimes. For not answering, for choosing her. You should. She was quiet for a moment. Then slowly, she placed her hand on top of his. But I also see what you've done, she whispered. These 3 years, watching you fall apart, watching you lose everything. Not because you had to, but because you chose to. Cassian didn't breathe. You chose to understand what you lost, she continued. You chose to become someone different. You chose me, finally, after everything. And I think, she looked at him, really looked at him. I think I'm tired of running, she said. I think I'm tired of hating you. I think maybe we could try to find something new, not what we had before, something different, something honest. Cassian's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? No, she almost smiled. But I want to try. Slowly, carefully, with a really good therapist and probably 100 more hard conversations. Anything, whatever you need. She squeezed his hand. I need you to understand something first. Anything. She leaned in close. If you ever put me second again, for anyone, for any reason, I will walk away and I won't come back. I understand. Do you? Yes. His voice was fierce, certain. You are my first priority. Now, forever, and will spend the rest of my life proving that, not because I owe you, but because you deserve it. Because you always did. Solène studied his face for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She smiled. Just a small one. Fragile. Uncertain. But real. Okay, she whispered. Epilogue. 1 year later. The nursery was painted soft yellow. Solène's choice. She said it reminded her of sunshine. Cassian stood in the doorway, watching her arrange stuffed animals on the shelf. 6 months pregnant, healthy, glowing. Finally happy. You're staring, she said without turning around. I'm admiring. She turned, one hand on her belly. The same belly? The same everything. The same you. The same miracle that you gave me another chance. She walked over to him, wrapped her arms around his neck. You earned it, the hard way, the real way. He kissed her forehead. I'd do it all again. Every painful moment, every lost dollar, every shattered piece of my ego. For this. For the baby? For you. The baby is a bonus. She laughed. That laugh. The one he'd thought he'd never hear again. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Cassian didn't even glance at it. He pulled the phone out, turned it off, placed it on the dresser, face down. Nothing is more important than this moment, he said. Nothing is more important than you, ever. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, and I will never, ever forget it. Solène's eyes glistened. Promise? Promise. She took his hand and placed it on her belly. Beneath his palm, something moved. A kick. Their daughter. The second chance they both thought was impossible. Later that night, after Solène fell asleep, Cassian did check his phone. 47 new messages from work. He smiled at the irony. Then he turned the phone back off and crawled into bed beside his wife. The woman who had called him 47 times on the worst night of their lives. The woman he'd failed in every possible way. The woman who had somehow, impossibly, let him back in. He would never silence her again. Not for anything. Not for anyone. Because he finally understood what he should have known all along. She was his first call. His first thought. His first priority. His first. Always.